Hey, Salukis, I'm Jeff Gleam, Executive Director of the SIU Alumni Association, and with me is Anna Toomey, and back in the studio is Caleb Hale running all the controls, and welcome to another edition of Saluki Sleuths. This edition is, this topic is about Paul and Virginia's statue. So we're going to have a little dialogue here with Anna and kind of learn a little bit about the backstories of this whole thing. But I'm going to turn it over to her real quick and kind of give us a little teaser of what we're about to see. Anna?
Yeah, Jeff, this was a really fun episode to put together, and there is so much more to the Paul and Virginia fountain than people may realize. I mean, this is a centerpiece on campus. People walk by it every day, right? And there's some that don't even know it's there. They'll walk by it. It's just not something that people think of very often, but oh, the story is so fascinating. So to kind of get us started here, I'm going to toss us over to a quick intro video to give us a taste of what we're going to see in the full episode.
For me, Paul and Virginia are all about survival.
The fountain was named after a French novella.
Our sculpture doesn't look like most others.
It goes back quite some time, as far as probably 1887.
Okay, so Anna, I have to say, we have 3 sleuths under our belt. We talked about the canon.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about the mascot, and we've talked about Fainter Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to tell you, I was prepared and kind of knew a little bit about each one of those going into it. Even some guesswork on my own of maybe why things were, what the sleuthing was.
Yeah.
This one stumped me before I actually watched the episode and did a little reading. Just talk to us a little bit about some of the things that, without giving everything away, maybe some of the sleuthing that you did, or maybe a tidbit that you learned that surprised you.
Absolutely. You know, people like to ask lots of questions about, is the fountain named after somebody? Like, who is Paul and Virginia? Did they go to SIU? So you're going to find out a lot about that in this episode. And it's thanks to a lot of interviews we did with SIU Property Control, the University Museum, and the Architecture Department, actually, who was very involved in Paul and Virginia. I mean, this is a fountain, a statue that has been on campus for decades. So this is generations of Salukis who have seen this statue. It's been through a lot, and it's seen a lot of history here on campus. A lot of people like to think of Paul and Virginia as a couple who's watching over SIU. And the things they've seen and been through is truly amazing.
Well, the one thing that surprised me about this episode versus some of the others is this has more of I'm going to use this term loosely, but there's more of a global appeal to this versus it's just not about SIU like some of our other stories have been.
Absolutely. And that was really interesting to find that out. We spoke with a historian, Eric Jones, who actually dug up this information that the model for Paul and Virginia, our Paul and Virginia, came from the World's Fair, the first one that was held in the United States in Philadelphia in the late 1800s. And, for anyone, familiar with the World's Fair, this was like, the big news of the year, basically. Nobody had internet at that time, right? You couldn't just go online and see what the latest trends were. So people would go to these World's Fair to see all sorts of designs and architecture from all over the world and kind of get a taste for what was in at the moment. And our records show that the Paul and Virginia style fountains were very popular. And actually, they weren't fountains at the time. They were just statues when this design first came out. And in those Victorian times, people would keep it in their gardens, decorate their homes with it. And it just took off. So you'll see Paul and Virginia designs all over the world. And you'll actually see this pair in a variety of ages. So when we look at our Paul and Virginia, they're young, right? They look like little kids. Most statues are actually of them older as teenagers. So that's what makes our fountain really unique, is that we've got them as 2 young children.
Yeah, and again, without giving away the entire story, I mean, there were some facts that I picked up on that my guess is a lot of our viewers wouldn't have known, and they'll find out some new things. And what I learned is Paul and Virginia could have been Romeo and Juliet type thing as well, too, right?
Absolutely. And there is that really, it's a precious story behind them, without trying to say too much so people can find out in the episode. It really is such a wonderful romance story. And for any of those who enjoy it and just those kind of themes, you're going to find out so much in this episode about what Paul and Virginia is, how they relate to each other, and how they've been depicted in multiple forms of art. That's a big part of the episode too, where there's fountains and sculptures, but Paul and Virginia you'll see it in movies, operas, all sorts of types of art, is how Paul and Virginia are expressed.
Well, I know there's a little tradition behind this, a little mystique about some things that the Paul and Virginia statue might bring to people. But I want to tell our viewers to pay attention at a very interesting historical tale that comes out of this, that, again, without trying to not give it away, it just talks about the age of a particular object that dates back to the beginning of the founding of the institution. I thought that was really neat.
I was blown away when we interviewed Brian Gorecki, who's an architect here at SIU. He actually did some of his own sleuthing about the base of the fountain that's out in front of Shryock. He thinks it's actually the oldest structure on campus. And in this episode, he's going to explain how he found that out and why. And I thought that was fascinating because SIU goes way back, right? And it's just interesting to think that this fountain base, he says it was there before Paul and Virginia was even a fountain. And there's photos in this episode that Morris Library dug up for us, and that was really fun to see these images from campus in the late 1800s, and you can see that base there, and you're like, wow, no kidding.
So, and I'll just close out with this. While the other 3 episodes that we did, I mean, there was some sleuthing involved, but this one issue, I think, now you did the work, but it seemed like not only were you providing more sleuthing than ever, but our participants were also providing more sleuthing than ever. And I just thought it just all came together and told a really fascinating story. So I applaud all of you, and I want to thank everybody involved in providing the research for this. I found it very interesting. And if I can, before we go to the video, I do want to thank our alumni. As we introduced Saluki Sleuths several months ago, we had some storylines already built in that we were going to do some research. And, I always start off with an introduction and a close of, please send in your ideas. I want to thank our audience for actually sending in an idea about the Paul and Virginia statue. So please send us some more.
Absolutely. And I'll let people know where they can find this episode. So it's actually, as we're speaking now, already posted to our Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube accounts. So for those ready to watch this, we're going to close out this live chat here shortly, and they can go straight to, the social media where you're watching this. Go to that page and it's going to be there. So Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, it's live now, and let us know what you think. We'd love to hear.
All right. Well, thanks, Anna. Thanks, Caleb. Thanks to the university for all your support. And I say, let's go watch. So until we see everybody again, go Dogs.
Go Dogs.
All right. Take care.